All right, we are live. We will get started here in just a sec when a couple people are able to join us. I'm going to check and make sure Facebook is working. All right, perfect. All set there. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jamie Chavez. I'm the president and CEO of the Westminster Chamber of Commerce, and we're excited to have you with us today. If this is your first time with us, a special welcome. Thank you for joining us. If you're on Facebook, you can like and follow our page and get notifications for when we go live in the future. And if you are on YouTube, you can hit subscribe. You can also find all of our previous broadcasts there as well. So if you're interested in going back into the archives and watching a few more of these, that's where you can do that. Let's see. We also do broadcasts on Wednesday that are a chance to introduce you to some of our newest members of the chamber. So we hope that you will join us for those ones as well. And as you watch the broadcast this morning, please feel free to engage with us, ask questions, say any comments, or just say hello, and we will get to those during the interview. And now finally, a warm welcome to City of Westminster Councilor Jack Johnson. How are you this morning?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well. It's supposed to be like 100 degrees today, so I'm not exactly looking forward to that.
Yeah, it is going to be a hot one. I try to walk to City Council, and today is going to be a tough one to walk to in a suit.
Oh, yeah. Geez. Your walk isn't too far, but that's brutal.
Yeah.
All the plants are outside getting crispy, so I gotta watch those.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for being here. I guess why don't we just get started with what is City Council currently working on? Like what you have council tonight, and you mentioned before you were getting ready. So what are you guys talking about tonight at council?
Yeah, absolutely. Tonight is another busy night. We had a lot of busy nights recently, but a couple of big things on our agenda tonight. It is a study session, and we're going to go over our state and federal legislative work. So obviously the state is done with their legislative session. Congress continues to go on, and we have a variety of different projects at those levels. So the conversation is to reflect on state legislation this year and how it's going to impact the city, and then also plan for next year. I mean, the city has a robust political presence, and sometimes we offer potential solutions to local problems to our state lawmakers. And so we're going to talk about what we could offer the state in terms of how could they run legislation that could better impact people here in Westminster in a positive way. And at the federal level, obviously federal policy is a little bit bigger, and our focus there oftentimes is budgetary work. So a lot of federal funds get spent at the state and local level, and we are the recipient of those funds often. But that work is a constant effort to advocate for our community. So earlier this year, we went and met with many of our federal delegation to talk about the needs of our community and pitch a couple of projects. And so tonight we're going to receive an update around how those conversations are going and what money looks like we'll be receiving from the federal government in order to work on local, mostly infrastructure projects.
Got it. Thank you for that. That's good to know. One thing that I kind of wanted to get into today, because we haven't really talked about this before, and I haven't talked about it much with council anyone on this broadcast. But like, walk us through what happens before a big council vote. Like, what does the preparation look like? And how does it, before it even gets to the dais, like, what is the process there?
Yeah, absolutely. There's kind of two tracks that come before us. There's stuff that's brought up through the internal workings of the city. So whether that's a development plan proposal or city initiated changes, such as last week we did a change to our parks and open space land swap that allows for the continued development of the Frisbee disc golf course at Westminster City Park, and the protection of that pollinator pathway that was developed along the the big dry open space that we built. And so by doing that land swap, parks can continue their work and open space can continue to be protected. And something like that is something that's usually initiated and generated by the city. And so that comes up to us through the city. It shows up usually either in a study session or directly on a packet. The other way is that we initiate things. So if we have ideas, we're hearing from constituents about something that needs to be improved or changed, we take a vote of council. We usually send it to a study session, and then from there the staff develop, based on their feedback, an agenda item that ends up being voted on. On Wednesdays, our agendas are posted on the city website. They're not only posted for us, for you too, so we all get to see them at the same time. There's no secrets there. And typically a lot of council, Wednesday through the end of the week, we'll take a pass at that agenda, I flag any big items that we see that I may need to do a little more research or ask questions on. And then over the weekend, kind of do a really in-depth review of the agenda. Sometimes it's 100 pages, sometimes it's 500 pages. Included in this week's agenda is the city's financial audit. So we'll be having a conversation on that, but that's, a book of 200 plus pages to read through. And from there, then, ask any questions over the weekend to the staff that proposed the agenda memo. So via email, maybe communicating where is this data, or where is this coming from, or can you explain a little bit more on that? And typically we also ask those questions on the dais, but by giving staff a heads up, they can come prepared. So we, email those questions and then also ask them to the staff, and they come prepared to answer them. And then, there's always the Monday before council. I always try to give my notes a one over to prepare for the day. So that's what I'll be doing this afternoon.
Fantastic. So you mentioned like a 200-page packet, right? Is that like the largest one that you've ever received? Do you ever get a little bit of a break?
Yeah, I've seen 500 or 600 pages. They're usually not less than 200, 150. The good news is a lot of it is material that we reviewed before, whether it's a study session or something else. And so typically you can go through a lot of the administrative paperwork pretty quickly and get into the data and the really deep research over the weekend. But there's a lot of reading in this job. There's no way to escape it.
Yeah, definitely. And your job is an attorney, and so you're used to doing the research. But that's something that I'm always interested in, is how legislators, because one person can't know everything that comes before you, right? You can't be a subject matter in everything. And so what do you do when you get a packet and you're like, holy cow, I don't know enough about this to cast a vote? What is your first step, and how do you do that research to come up to speed?
Yeah, well, the good news is that the agenda memo that's written by staff really at least give a introductory level summary of the work that's done. The second step, especially because none of us are experts in everything, is to send follow-ups to the staff who wrote the agenda memo. So if it's like the Parks Department, follow up to them, or if it's community development, follow up to them. Also reaching out to fellow councilors, right? Like someone like Sarah is an expert in land use. And so if we're doing something with land use and I have a question in addition to asking the staff, I will also ask for her education and input. And then it is a lot of research. I mean, there are a lot of good tools available to us at the city that we can ask for, like reviewing our comprehensive plan and all the background for that. If it's legal research, I, go and open up my statute books and do some legal research there. And the having developed and worked on council for 6 months with these type of projects, the good news is that by the time it's posted on a Wednesday agenda, hopefully you've done a study session where you've done a lot of the research and question asking. So you're at least somewhat prepared, and that follow-up is not as difficult or time intensive.
Awesome. And so the public can go on the website the Wednesday before council meeting and even before a study session, see what's kind of on the agenda, and then let's talk about like public comment. So if someone in the public reads the packet, there's something that they would like to address or bring to you. How much does public comment actually influence a vote?
It influences a vote a lot. I think I've heard many times, even just in my 6 months, where people have been swayed, on the fence based on the way people have done public comment. I would say, like I have every time we have public comment, I have my notes right here from people that come, and I try to follow up. And public comment is a really great tool, not only to influence the existing votes that are coming up, but also to put new things on our radar. Everyone that comes to public comment, the follow up from city office, if they're raising an issue like stoplights not working or something, will get follow ups from us. Again, I have my notes of people to follow the last public comment, and so it both influences an existing vote, but it also helps us raise new issues that maybe we're not seeing, because I don't live at 144th. So if there's a traffic light not working there, you come to public comment, you let us know, we can address it.
Awesome. Yeah, I've definitely learned a lot listening to other people's public comments. So you're right about that for sure. And then another thing that I think that people ask about sometimes because they're not really sure about, and without discussing obviously anything confidential, what actually happens in executive session and why do those meetings exist?
Yeah, there's a couple of, we can only do executive session for some very specific reasons, and it's typically information that is sensitive, that if it were to get out in the public, it could be used against us. So it's not just for things we don't want to tell people. It's for things that we can't tell people, or it can be used against the city in a negative way. So the prime example is for legal advice. Like if we don't know, if we want legal advice on an issue, we have attorney-client privilege. And that legal advice, if someone knew it, could understand our litigation strategy. So for example, if the city is being sued for something that a city employee may or may not have done, we want to know all the facts, and we want to know actually what kind of legal risk we have, and potentially like what would be a good settlement offer. If the opposing party knew what a good settlement offer is, then that's not a good settlement offer, and they'd ask for more because they know what we're thinking. Another example is for really sensitive issues of development. Like if we are either buying or selling land, as anyone who's kind of made a purchase before like that, you don't want the other party to know kind of what you're thinking in terms of how much you're willing to sell it for, how much you're willing to buy it for.
You don't want to show all your cards.
Yeah, exactly. Because if they know we're willing to pay up to $1 million, but our first offer is $700,000, I think taxpayers would rightfully want us to negotiate the lowest price possible and save money. If people know we're willing to go up to $1 million because that's in a public meeting, then they're going to ask for $1 million right away. So it's for those really sensitive matters that if they were made available to the general public, would be used to hurt the general public and the taxpayers of Westminster. So we don't do them often, but that's almost always what they're for.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I think that's great. People just don't often know like what's the best way to bring something forward? How do those meetings work? So I just kind of wanted to give everybody a little preview of what a council meeting looks like. And if they want to do public comment, they show up at in between 6 and 6:30 to sign up for that, right?
Yep, that's correct. City council starts at 6:30. I think there's even a little bit of time where when after city council starts, you can still sign up. So if you show up a couple of minutes late and we're getting going and doing the pledge and approving the minutes, you can still sign up. And so we definitely sign up early because you get higher up on the list. If there's 20 people, you want to go first and say your piece and hopefully leave. But anytime you can show up. You can also submit emails and voicemails to public comment. So if you can't make, but you still want it to be on the record, we receive that as part of the packet. Additionally, even if it's not for the formal record of public comment, email us. I think there's a general city council inquiry link. You can also email me or any one of us directly, or email all of us on the same line. We always get back. One of us or multiple of us get back to people who reach out, especially on urgent city issues, and we often will also forward that to the city manager's office so they can take care of the issue. Again, I use traffic lights as an example. I just got an email about a traffic light on 101st and Sheridan, sent that to the city manager, and they're working on it. So it wasn't a formal public comment, but it is definitely a way to raise issues for us or make your voice heard.
Awesome. Thank you. So yeah, I encourage people, if you've got something that you would like for council to know, those are some really good options for getting that in front of you guys. So thanks for going through all that.
Yeah, of
I
course.
kind of want to ask you, like, what is something that people contact you about that, or that people don't contact you about that you wish they would? Like, what do you want to help more with?
Yeah. I think we get all kinds of outreach, whether it's trash or it's a lot of infrastructure related things, which rightfully is the city's responsibility. We don't honestly we don't hear a lot back on agenda items. If there is a development proposal, we will hear from people that are impacted by that development. But we have lots of agenda items. Today I mentioned both our state and our policy, but we're also discussing potential rebates and tax credits for things like infant formula and childcare centers here in the city to try to make it a little bit more affordable to live here. And obviously, when we solicit outreach, if I go knock on your door and ask you what you think, you'll tell me. But we don't actually receive a lot of people that look at the agenda and read the agenda and reach out and say this is a good or a bad idea. What's actually most helpful is this is a good idea, but you can do it better. And here's a great way to do it better. And when people reach out with those, suggestions, they're often really great, and they influence a lot how we talk to the city manager and improve those agenda items. And so I would love for people to reach out to us on specific agenda items so we can make sure that in this representative democracy, we are representing the people when we take these votes and not just using our best judgment.
Yeah, definitely. And like, what would you say in the next 12 months are some things that Westminster residents should start paying attention to?
Yeah, I think right immediately this study session going forward, our tax credit and rebate scheme, I think we're looking really closely at how to make things more affordable. And so that's going to be not just what's on the agenda tonight, but an ongoing conversation over the next 6 months about in tax year 2027 and preparing for that year and the budget for that year. What can we do to make things more affordable? Where can we reduce taxes? Obviously, always balancing the need for city revenue to do the essential functions that are required. In August, we're going to, along that same line of revenue, we're going to be talking about our water rates. And that's, we had a task force that did some wonderful work. We have a cost of service study that's been done to help us learn how much it actually costs to deliver the service to water. Obviously, we're not making any money on water. We're trying to make it a revenue neutral endeavor where we're providing the highest quality water at a rate that it sustains the water infrastructure. And so, then all of that gets wrapped into the budget. So watch the budget conversation. Please provide input on that. This fall, I think maybe August, we're going to start having additional budget conversations, and then we approve the budget in October. And so planning for, it's not only good for your input, but also just what our city economy looks like. The budget has a big revenue projection. You can understand where we're making money and how that's going to impact your services.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I'm also curious just about like what goes on behind the scenes at City Hall. And if you could take a Westminster resident behind the scenes for one day, like what would surprise them the most?
Yeah. City Hall is there, the city has a lot of people working really hard all the time. Every time I visit there's folks that are asking questions of the city manager. I mean, so a lot of work goes on from our perspective. The behind the scenes tour of City Hall, I think what would be most interesting and surprising is that not only are these people excellent workers, but they're really good people. And having spent a lot of time with them, you develop these great relationships. And so, for example, last Monday, we had a 4-3 vote. It was a tight vote on a really fascinating issue of development in our community. And sometimes it can look tense up there on the dais, but I will tell you, if you were to come behind the scenes and go to council dinner before, or just when sometimes we're sitting around a table, we all have great friendly conversations of really hardworking, not only the council but also the staff. And so I think when you see the dice, everything is so formal and so rigid. You don't get to see the behind the scenes of us just talking about our weekends and our kids and all of the great things that we get to do together.
Yeah, that's really great. It's good to see that dynamic between council and city staff for sure.
Yeah.
And what's something that people think that the city controls or that city council controls, but really you don't?
Yeah, a lot of things. I think, a lot of policies dictated by the state and federal government. I think what the city is our core function is really providing essential services, things like roads, water, sewer. We don't, and people pay their electricity bill to Excel, right? Some places have utilities. We don't have the city-owned energy infrastructure. But the biggest thing is really human services. I mean, human services are an issue. I mean, they're the people they're your neighbors. They're the unhoused people living in our community. They're the kids living in our community, and we invest to address human services related issues. But that is actually something that we receive no real dollars from, and it's not really a core city function, and that is driven by the counties. Here it's Jefferson and Adams, and state and federal policy. Things like Medicaid policy, SNAP benefits, like all the things that could really address the human services needs of our residents are controlled by people not on city council. And so we try our best to invest additional revenue or additional resources there. But ultimately, that is a really tough issue for us, and something that most factors are outside of our control.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure that happens a lot, that you're kind of dealing with that regular. Yeah. What happens when you get two good options in front of you? How do you decide which way to vote?
Yeah, that's a great question. Two good options or two bad options. I will tell you that, the fallback for me is always the really hard data that's provided to us. So ultimately, there are a lot of factors in play. But if there is conflicting factors, conflicting opinions, I will always rely on the data around, the outcome that we want to see, and what does the data say will give us the better of those outcomes. Whether it's two hard decisions and either are perfect, that happens in the budget cut world all the time. When you have to cut things and you're looking at what to cut, two bad decisions. You don't want to cut anything. These services are important, but ultimately, when we identify an outcome, what is the best data-driven solution to get to that outcome? And that's also with two good decisions. What does the data say is the better avenue to get to that end goal for us?
Yeah, definitely. Good morning, Parker. Thanks for joining us today. Well, as you mentioned, you have council tonight. Is there anything else that we haven't chatted about today that you'd like people to be aware of in the city right now?
I think the last thing that people should look at, especially for our agenda tonight, is our financial audit. It's a public audit, and it's in the agenda packet. I have the physical booklet next to me, and I think when people think about the city, one of the things when I first decided to run for city council, one of the best pieces of advice I got was read the audit in the city budget, because that'll tell you what the city actually does. And so, and what we prioritize. And so looking at that audit and looking at that budget is a really great tool to understand what your city is doing for you, and maybe provide you insight of what the city can be doing more of, right? That is always something that is going to be looming over our heads a lot over the next 6 months as we finalize, 5 months as we finalize the budget. I think it's going to monopolize a lot of the conversations that we have. And so it is going to be a reoccurring theme, and also just a great educational experience for anyone who tunes in.
Awesome. And then my last question, what is something that you have learned from another council member that has changed the way that you approach the job?
Yeah. There are two things I think that I've learned from other council members that have really changed the way I've approached the job. The first one is from a council member who really helped me understand and identify the way decisions that we make around land use impact someone's everyday life. Because unless you're making a land use decision that impacts your front yard, most land use decisions, while it impacts our community, things like building, like the physical act of building and the disruption that may have in people's lives, and how you talk about that in the context of development. And then once that building's up, just like the visual aesthetics of that is your new neighbor. And imagine if you have to look at that every day, what does that do to you and influence your decision? And so looking at the human side of development and land use, I think, was a really great piece of advice that has really given respect to me making land use decisions. And then the other is to not forget in all the busyness of city council to do fun things. And like Councilor Zadi is like a great movie critic, and he has the Alamo Pass, and he can watch movies. And like things like that, even though it's not a direct piece of advice, are a reminder to retain do the things you love, especially do the things you love in the city while serving, because this can be a job that monopolizes all of your time in addition to having a day job. So that's always a helpful reminder.
Yeah, that's great. I love that advice. I also did not know that Councilor Zadi was a movie buff. I'm gonna have to talk to him about that.
He does. He has a score sheet criteria and everything, and sometimes we disagree on it, but he's definitely a movie critic.
Awesome. I love that. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. It's always a pleasure to have you on the broadcast and to hear about what's going on down at City Hall. Thanks for everybody who tuned in, and for everybody that's going to rewatch this later. And hope to see you all at council sometime.
Yeah.
I hope everybody has a good rest of your week.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Bye, Councilor.
See ya.